my first guest, he's been on the show a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's always got stuff going.
I like to, yeah.
Yeah. Chris Diaz, and I have to confess, I originally wrote down the name of your company wrong.
It's Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, not Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
I know, it's a play.
Yeah, if you get it that far, you're at least pronouncing it at least partially right.
Yeah.
Because most people will see Deus Machina, and then, well, obviously you don't know Greek literature very well.
No. And so now, what is Deus Ex Machina? Describe it. Like, is it?
It's a publishing company that I founded in 2007 to be kind of the vehicle for my my role playing games that I was publishing.
Okay.
And that's been, and now it also spirals off to do my novels as well. But it's been doing this for just over 10 years.
So it did start off as a games company.
Yeah. It's always been
then,
first and foremost a games company. Yeah.
And then your books, I think, most of them are set in the universes of your games, aren't they?
Well, yeah.
So
everything I write is either within a setting I've created, or it's a generic set of rules, so it doesn't pertain to any specific setting.
Yeah.
But obviously, Amethyst is my magnum opus, so that's the one that all the novels are based out of, or most of the novels are based out of.
So you're not doing novels like based in the Star Trek universe?
Oh no, I don't. Yeah, I don't write pop culture because I'll never get paid for it.
Oh, okay. So when you started doing the rules and everything for Amethyst, because that came first, right?
Yeah,
the role
did that in 2008 and 2010.
As you were doing the rules, was there already in the back of your mind even the idea of, as the world was developing, you were kind of going, somebody, I could write a book about this?
Well, I had always had conceived the narrative within this setting, and before I wrote the games, I ran the game. I was playing these with my friends as early as 2001. So I had a large narrative to work off of. And then the novel series is based very loosely off of this original game that we played in the early aughts. So I basically spiraled it off from there. But yeah, I've always thought of the narrative first. And the rule books are basically about 80 to 90% what the actual narrative is. So yeah.
So not really that many rules as such. It's more, here's what's happening in the universe.
Well, I said I use the rules as an excuse to sell the books. And then people will buy the books for the rules and accidentally fall into the narrative. Like the last book we just came out, Factions, which was in last April. Not the last book I published, but the last one in the setting. It's like 80% story and 20% rules, right? I hook them in with the rules and I bring them into the story.
Now, do people need to read the books to keep up on what's happening in the games? Like, do the books provide?
No, they're
almost a set apart thing.
They are completely divorced from each other. So,
yeah.
Although you'll pick up excerpts from the novels in the games, and you can, if you have the game, you'll know where they're going. Like, oh, I know this place; it's in this entry in this book. But under no circumstances are you required to know one to know the other.
Does it make it tricky sometimes in the game then? Because you're going to have people playing the game who have not read the books.
Yeah.
You don't really want to give away too much information in the game that some people might know about, who maybe shouldn't know, because it's not available to everybody.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's the same. It's the same thing with movies and a novel, right? You watch the movie, you read the book, and sometimes people have read the books of Game of Thrones, and they're like, "Oh, I know what's happening on this episode." And so it's the same thing. If you read the game and then read the books, you'll go, "Oh, this character finally shows up. I know who this person is." Yeah. So yeah, if you play the game and then read the book, you'll have a bit of a leg up, but it's not. It doesn't give you an advantage. It just basically is just another tool.
Because nothing says I'll just refer to him as the Games Master. I don't know if
Games Master is absolutely the terminology. Yeah.
The Games Master doesn't have to follow the book.
Oh, absolutely not.
And they can introduce a character and then leave him way off to the side. They just brought him in for some reason, maybe to provide a piece of news, and then he's gone again. And all of a sudden, the guy who knows all about this character is going, we're going this way.
Oh yeah, everyone, because I have hundreds of people, thousands of people that play in the setting worldwide, and they have told me their own variations and what they've done to their own settings and to make it different. And some people have taken radical departures. Some people have taken the rules and threw the setting out completely and just used that.
Wow.
Which is the reason why I took those rules and published them separately, and that became a bigger success, oddly enough.
So now, so the books that you're writing in that setting, are they still sort of playing catch up in time? Like, because you were saying the first books that you wrote were basically from the original games you guys played back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Are you starting to catch up to,
Well,
say, real time?
there are two game books, Quintessence and Factions,
Right.
and they have told the story about up to the end of book 3, and I've written up to the end of book 2. So you will have a little bit of a leg up, but not much. I'm running a Kickstarter sometime in the summer. Now that my last Kickstarter that we talked about last time is getting resolved in about a month, and that'll be to return to Amethyst for another novel and another game book, which will once again, the novel will go further and the game will go further than that.
So the game will always be, your plan is to have the game always sort of running a little bit ahead of the novel.
Yeah, because it's basically a story Bible. It allows me to construct the world, the places and the locations, create that map, to create all these little things, and then I can write the book and carry our characters through that.
And as you're saying as well, it doesn't, the player who's been reading the books doesn't have as much of an advantage then.
No,
because he recognizes some of the things, but he has no idea what's going to be in the book because the book isn't out yet.
Well, that's the thing. That's the difference between certain fantasy or science fiction writers. Are they creating the world and then populating with characters, or are they making their characters into a world? And I like creating. If you read the game for the world, and you read the novels for the characters. I mean, you can read a rule book about Harry Potter, but you watch the movies because of Hermione and Harry Potter and Ron Weasley and all that. Yeah. So you follow those characters.
And whose name must not be said.
And exactly. Yeah. And if you wanted to play a Harry Potter game and you wanted to make your own wizard, that's your own story. But you read the books because of those people. And that's the big distinction. You play the game if you want to inhabit that story in your own character, create your own narrative, and you read the novels when you want to see the actual canonical narrative.
Yeah. So I know a fair number, I think, of the games that are based on Lord of the Rings. Yeah. You are playing one of the characters from the thing. You don't create your own character.
Yeah.
One of them.
Yeah. Although a lot of those games are constructing original characters, so when they're not necessarily recreating the Middle Earth storyline that we know it.
Yeah. And so now you've got another book or piece of writing, I guess might be more specific, that is not set in that universe as far as I know.
No.
Aerial Alpha.
Yeah.
Now, and this is why I said a piece of writing, because I'm not clear. Was this a book to start with?
Well, if you want to go into the true history, so about 3 or 4 years ago, I wrote a game book called Neurospasta, which was a cyberpunk setting using my D&D rules. And it was it was a single book, wasn't like Amethyst, it wasn't a novel. I just took
standalone
as a standalone story to create a setting. And many moons later, Norm Coyne and I are talking, and I had written a script for him called Palingenesis, a feature film length that we're trying to find support for. And in order to get a name for the company, he wanted to develop some short subjects, and we did Doctor's Case, and we had the Wicked Ways last year. So earlier this year, he said, well, what do you have? Let's see about doing some shorter stories. So I pitched him about 5 or 6 ideas, varying from horror to science fiction. And we figured out that the one story felt the easiest to conceive because of its subject matter. And that character in that story was pulled from that old cyberpunk setting. So I took that character out of that book and then created a new narrative with that character. So technically it's within that original setting, but we've spun it off into its own little universe.
So the character isn't even in the world that he was to start with.
Well, actually, there's two primary characters in Aerial Alpha, and the character I pulled from the game is actually the female character, and then the male character is a completely new construct. So we've taken her and we put her into a new location. Okay. Theoretically, it could be the same setting, but we're not taking the narrative or the other character. We're just taking this person out and creating a new story, which is this relationship between these two characters.
So they're in the same universe, but it would be, again, saying it was set on Earth. The original book, they were in Europe, and in this one, all of a sudden, she's in South America.
Yeah, basically, we've plucked them out of the specific setting.
Yeah.
And we're not referencing that setting. So we've taken that character and the implied setting, and then we're implanting it into this. So we've pulled off all the superfluous stuff out of that setting and just keeping all the stuff that's important for this story. Because when you're dealing with something that's 30 minutes or so, you have to cut out all the fluff and just focus on the meat of the story.
And so, what was it like? Like, was this the first time you'd written something as a movie script?
Oh, I know. I've been writing movie scripts since the 90s. In fact, I met Norm at a screenwriting class in the 90s. So I wrote a bunch of screenplays in the 90s. I moved into game writing and novel writing through the aughts and up to the present. And so that was like riding a bike. So like 2 years ago, I wrote Palingenesis. I did that in about 3 weeks. And then I wrote Aerial Alpha earlier this year, and in that span, we've hashed out another story called Today, and that one was done in over a weekend.
Jeez. So, is script writing something that you find just comes fairly easily to you?
Well, for one thing, I don't have to be artsy. When you're writing a novel, there's the voice of the characters, and then there's the voice of the narrator, and you can be superfluous, you can be flowery, but the point is that all the words outside of the dialogue become important. They become poetry as much as what people say. When you're writing a screenplay, since you have to follow a function and a form, that is removed from you, so you are able to focus on the more technical aspects. So you can still tell your story the way you want to tell it, have characters saying what you want to say, but you get to strip out, and you're no longer burdened by having to poetically compose a scene. You can be technical about it, saying, this is what's in the room, there's a pair of headphones, there's a computer, and there's two people talking on a mic.
Stage direction.
But if I'm narrating, I'm like, and when we stood inches apart, our faces staring at each other, like, I don't need to put all that because that's implied in the story. Yeah. And because you're following a very technical function of the exact font and the style. Some people will get really turned off because they want to be poetic. They want to break from that form. And screenplays are the opposite. You got to fit that formula. So sometimes it's liberating because of the restrictions. I get to explore in that space. Sometimes when you have unlimited space, you go out too thin and you wade out and you run off and you confuse yourself. When you're limited to the limitations of a script, you get to expand in a smaller area and you get to explore that space and fill it completely instead of being spread out. So it works really, really well for me.
I heard somebody who was a game designer say one of the things he found as he was designing was, what was the line he used? Restrictions breed creativity.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Now, so I'm guessing you have also adapted some of your books to scripts?
Amethyst has never been adapted to script, but I did write the novel making it feel like it's a movie. And but no, I've never adapted a game into a script or a novel into a script, but it's not that difficult because I do work the same brain.
Yeah.
Also because the scripts I've been writing, I've been trying to keep them relatively low budget, and my novels are anything but. Because when you write, one big advantage of being a novelist is that you don't have to worry about the cost of what you're visualizing.
The 50,000 members of the Royal Guard came in.
Exactly. When you're writing a script like Aerial Alpha, it's just like, well, two people in a restaurant talking for 25 minutes.
My Dinner with Andre.
Exactly. It was inspired by Dinner with Andre. It deals with a guy who's he's a young widower. He is kind of trying to move on with his life, but he's detached from the rest of humanity because he's been grieving. And so he kind of embraces this new technology as a way of being a shortcut to find this romantic solution. And it creates a very interesting dynamic for the course of the story.
Yeah. Good. Chris Diaz Ex Machina, Aerial Alpha, Amethyst. I could go on, but unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time.
Yeah.
However, I've got a feeling Aerial Alpha may come up in the next section with my next guest. After 9.